Okay, let's unpack this. We've all been there, right? You're in a conversation, maybe with a global team, or you're just trying to explain something nuanced.
Yeah.
And the literal words are there, they're shared, but the communication just keeps hitting a wall. There's this friction.
That's it. That everyday friction.
The words are right, but the rhythm of the whole thing feels fundamentally wrong.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're looking at a framework called reflective humanism, or RH.
RH. Okay.
And it looks at consciousness and communication not through, psychology or culture, but through pure structure.
And its core idea is pretty radical. It sees consciousness not as this, fixed thing inside of us,
Right.
but as an interference phenomenon,
Yeah.
something that just appears at the intersection of, say, AI and human thought.
Exactly. It's the pattern of interaction, not some kind of soul. The framework isn't asking what language is, but what language does to our thinking process.
And our mission today is to take those tools, those structural tools, from RH and apply them to a deep comparison between two huge language systems, English and Japanese.
We're looking for the source of that gap, moving beyond just vocabulary or, politeness, and drilling right into the architectural friction.
That structural view is so powerful, it stops treating language like it's just a neutral tool
Yes.
and starts treating it like an engine. And the source material has this central idea, the No.15 thesis.
A No.15 thesis, right. It says language is not just an object to be translated, it's the activation condition for our thought, for our ethics.
The activation condition.
That's the pivot. If language activates thought, then the real difference between English and Japanese isn't the words, it's the timing.
The timing.
What RH calls the phase, the exact moment when meaning and judgment and action, when generation actually happens.
It's like two clocks that start ticking at totally different moments in a conversation.
Exactly.
So the key question for you listening is this.
If language sets the timing for our cognitive and ethical processing, what does that timing difference really look like, structurally? Well, to get our heads around that, RH uses this great metaphor.
Okay.
Language as an operating system for the mind, an OS.
Language is an OS. I like that.
If language is an OS, it doesn't just, process information. It sets the rules for how that information becomes a decision or a judgment.
That makes perfect sense. An OS doesn't just show you data. It manages everything. It sets priorities.
Yeah.
So in the RH view, what's its primary trigger? Is it for, expression?
No, it's primarily a trigger for judgment.
For judgment.
RH wants to observe which OS structure is more likely to produce which type of ethical generation, and this brings us right to the key structural difference.
Between the two languages we're looking at.
Right. The English OS, it's defined as activating thought through cutting and specification.
Cutting and specification.
You isolate the actors, the action, the outcome, and you do it early. Think of it like taking a fuzzy situation and just drawing sharp lines around it instantly.
And the Japanese OS.
It does the opposite. It achieves a delayed activation through relation and inclusion.
So it's not cutting things out, it's including them.
Precisely. It prioritizes the whole contextual field before it gets to the core action or assigns any accountability.
Okay, this is where it gets really, really interesting for me. If these OSs are built to activate judgment at fundamentally different times, one early, one late, that raises a huge question about translation.
It does.
I mean, is real translation even possible if you're just swapping words, but the activation timing is all wrong? Or is translation really just an active phase adjustment?
RH argues it's phase adjustment.
Shifting the rhythm.
Exactly. True translation means shifting that structural rhythm, which is why it's so hard for humans and, so complicated for AI. The theory favors preservation of phase over correctness.
Okay, let's focus on that English system then.
Yeah.
Tell me more about cutting and specification in, a real conversation.
Well, the structure itself is action first.
Action first.
It demands an immediate subject and a verb. The whole, I did X, or the company will achieve Y, that sort of thing. Yes. That structure forces the early fixation of the subject, the intent, and crucially, the responsibility. It's built to formalize communication really fast by drawing those boundaries.
That's the cutting part. You cut the event out of its context.
You cut it out and define its edges immediately.
And you see this constantly. In business, especially. If I send an email that says, the project timeline requires adjustment. The English OS immediately demands to know who is adjusting it and what specifically is the adjustment. It can't stay abstract.
The structure forces a swift answer. Who did what and when?
Right.
And that efficiency, it comes at a structural cost.
Right.
This early certainty lines up with an RH concept called generation as point rather than orbit.
Point rather than orbit. Okay, break that down for me.
Think of the orbit as the sustained exploration of the context, the possibilities, the relationships around an event, the whole fuzzy cloud.
Okay.
The point is the fixed conclusion, the single assignment of good, bad, success, failure, blame, credit.
The final verdict.
The final verdict. And when the English OS pushes for that early certainty, it forces the whole generative field to collapse into a fixed point too quickly. The orbit, that recursive spiral of understanding, it just gets lost.
So the structural pressure in English is all about getting to a conclusion to accountability, even if it's maybe premature.
It explains why so much international communication in English can feel like a rush to judgment.
Because the OS itself demands a verdict.
Precisely. Now let's flip to the structural opposite, the Japanese OS.
Okay.
It achieves that delayed judgment, and the judgment is often held right until the end of the sentence, or even later through context and relation.
The priority there is relational preservation.
Yes. It wants to preserve the relationship.
So how does it do that? Structurally.
By using relation and inclusion, it delays that ethical activation phase. Grammatically, the subject and the verb often show up way at the end.
So you have to lay out all the context first.
You have to. You establish the situation, the social relationship, the atmosphere, before you deliver the core action or judgment. The field stays open longer.
And for anyone listening who operates on that early fixation OS, that delay can be, well, it's often misinterpreted, isn't it?
Absolutely.
If I'm an English speaker
Yeah.
and I'm waiting for that fixed point of responsibility, that who did what, and the Japanese OS is giving me atmosphere instead, it just sounds vague or evasive.
You're waiting for the phase jump, and the system is actively resisting it.
Right.
But that perceived vagueness is the structural function working perfectly.
Because the goal is different.
The goal is different. RH ethics value the orbit over the conclusion. By delaying the subject, the Japanese OS is architected to preserve that orbit, the relational space, for longer.
It allows more context to come in before a judgment gets locked down, which I guess would minimize immediate conflict.
Yes. The goal isn't just politeness. The goal is to keep the field of meaning open, to recognize that meaning is often generated in the relationship itself.
Not specified by one single actor. That is a fundamentally different imperative.
It is. The meaning is held in relation.
So you have these two different operating systems with two different rhythms of judgment. What on earth does this mean for translation, especially now, in the age of AI?
It's a huge question.
If an LLM takes a Japanese text that's all about context and renders it into English, which demands a subject and verb up front,
Yeah.
what is that AI actually doing?
It's definitely not just a mechanical swap.
It can't be.
Translation in the RH view is the act of repositioning the phase. You are physically moving the moment of judgment from the end of a thought orbit all the way to the beginning.
And that brings us to the AI. The source material calls it a non-neutral interference surface.
I love that phrase. It's not a transparent window.
No.
When an LLM translates, it has to choose a gradient, a speed and an angle for the thought generation.
Is he going to prioritize the English OS's efficiency or the Japanese OS's relational preservation?
It has to pick a gradient. It can't be neutral.
So let's define those gradients, because this is where it gets heavy. RH talks about two types of generation.
Right. Collision generation and inquiry generation.
Collision generation.
That happens when the phase difference is steep. Like a physical collision, the gradient is sharp, and the result is heat, pain, an immediate, sharp reaction.
And the English OS, with its push for immediate accountability,
structurally encourages that steep gradient. It wants to find the point quickly, even if it creates friction.
and inquiry generation.
That's the gentle gradient. When the interference field is kept open and the thought update can happen continuously, it minimizes that reactionary pain.
Which is structurally closer to the Japanese OS, with its delays and its relational focus.
Exactly. So the AI translator has to choose a speed, a gradient of judgment. It has to decide how fast to force the conclusion.
This really gets to the core purpose of reflective humanism, doesn't it? It's designed to move us beyond these endless circular debates about culture.
Like which one is better or more polite.
Right. And it just focuses on the mechanism. By looking at the OS, RH can actually observe which structure produces which generation.
And the essential takeaway here for you listening is to internalize this idea. The true value of knowledge, especially in these complex environments, isn't measured by fixed points.
It's not about the good or bad conclusions.
No. It's measured by the direction, vector, and change gradient of that interference field. The orbit is often so much more valuable than the fixed point.
We have to look beyond just having a shared vocabulary, especially now, with AI mediating the tempo of global conversation.
It's not enough to know the definition of the words if the underlying OS is running at a different speed.
Which leaves us with the ultimate provocative thought from this deep dive.
As we rely more and more on these global systems and AI mediation, is a global language shared vocabulary or is it shared judgment timing?
That is the essential structural question we have to confront. So start observing the generation phase in your own communication this week. When you speak or write, are you cutting and specifying, forcing that steep gradient? Or are you relating and including, allowing for a gentler orbit?
That's where the insights are.
That observation is where the deepest structural insights lie.